Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Spud #1 by Art Baxter. This was published in 1996 by Art Baxter after he received a Xeric grant, and he put the money to good use. This is a pretty nice comic, a little fatter than your average comic, really nice cardstock cover. Well, not cardstock, but a thicker type of paper. And look at this great wraparound cover here. Just this art, I bought this off the stands when it came out. I had no idea who Art Baxter was. I assume he did some mini comics before this. That's how I got a Xeric grant. But man, instantly I was like, I gotta buy this comic. Like, just this art is just so fun looking. It's just the kind of stuff I love. Just classic, goofy cartooning. You know this comic just by looking at this art is going to be okay, at least. It's not going to be terrible. It just has such a sense of goofy fun that I knew I'd like it. And I was correct, because I did end up liking it. And I still like it today. Inside front cover introducing all the characters. Welcome to the world of Spud. And just great cartooning. His first story, The Awful Dolls of Sister Agnes. This is weird if you just ignore this little face here. Everything about that panel is so Evan Dorkin. Really weird. It just looks like it's from an Evan Dorkin comic. But obviously, his normal cartoony style looks nothing like it. So we start off with this adventure of Billy. And Billy's a Catholic school kid. He's a very good kid. But he has a bad kid friend named Tommy. And Tommy's always getting into trouble. Tommy tells Billy that he's got some dynamite that he wants to show him later. Some contraband. And Billy's dying to see it. He's like, come on. And Tommy's like, dude, we got to be careful. I can't just take it out in the hall here. This is hot stuff I got. So they go to the chapel. And I guess it's abandoned at this time of day. Man, just look at this great cartooning. Every panel. Really good stuff. And Tommy takes out the contraband, and it's a lingerie catalog. You kids might not know this, but there was a time when even just seeing a woman in a bra was just like hot shit. Like, we had no porn growing up. And so something like this was gold. So they're all oohing and ahhing over the pictures. They're two dumb kids too, so it's kind of funny how confused they are, and just obviously they don't really know why they like looking at these pictures. But then we see Sister Agnes creeping into the chapel, and she whips out a ruler, shreds the magazine, and then whacks them a few times, and then tells them to march to her office. These guys, they know they're fucked. Sister Agnes is not a nun to be trifled with. So while they're waiting for their punishment, Tommy tells Billy about this. It's almost like a schoolyard legend, like schoolyard mythology, where Sister Agnes, apparently, when you get in trouble, she has two dolls. One looks like it's sick and one looks like the devil. Apparently, you pull down on their bodies and a message pops up on the top of their head. And the sick doll basically will always just say, you are sick. And then you'll have to spend 2 weeks after school washing the blackboards. And the devil doll, though, is different. And he's heard stories from his older brother that when you stare into its eyes, it wells up like a frog's throat. And a long tongue comes out of its mouth and flicks you in the face. And its breath smells like a million dirty socks. And he tells Billy that one kid actually did pick the devil doll once, and he was never seen again. So it's obviously one of those stupid things that kids believe, you know, just this weird like urban legend. Tommy goes in, and while he's in there, Billy is just sick with guilt. He's having this vision of these lingerie models floating around Satan. That's a great panel there. Some of these panels also remind me of that. Do you guys remember that guy, Jeremy Eaton? He had that comic Whatnot from Fantagraphics. He did a lot of stuff for Fantagraphics. Some of these weird panels remind me of that. So Tommy comes out and says, take my word for it, man. Pick the sick doll. So Billy comes in, and the nun is very disappointed in Billy because Billy's never even been in trouble before. He's such a good kid. And he's kind of a goody two-shoes type. And she tells him, she says, if you feel sick about what you've done, pick the sick doll. If you think you did a bad thing, pick the devil. Make your choice, Billy. And Billy can't resist because he thinks he did a bad thing. But also, I think he's got a little bit of curiosity in him, too. And he picks the devil. When he pulls down on the body, it just says, see you later. And Sister Agnes says, you can go home now, Billy. He's like, well, I don't have to stay after school? And she's like, no, run along. So he's very relieved. He runs out of school. And Tommy is washing the blackboards, looking out the window, saying, hey, how come Billy gets to go home? So Billy's walking home now, and he passes a lingerie shop. And he's checking out the mannequins for a second. And then all of a sudden, he feels a presence behind him, and it's the shadow of the devil we see. And he runs off to home, terrified. This next one is Dominic DeSanto. And this is such a weird comic in a way. It's almost problematic. I really like this comic. But it is such a blatant ripoff of Jim Woodring. It's shameless. But, you know, it's like with music. You know, some bands just rip off other bands. But that other band wasn't doing something at the time. So it's like, well, this is like a bargain basement version of this thing I really love. It's still okay. This is not nearly as great as Jim Woodring. His art isn't nearly as great. It's pretty damn nice, though. But, man, I mean, just look at his face. I mean, even though, you know, at first look, you'd think, oh, it's a mix of Henry and Bazooka Joe. But after reading this comic, you'll see that little butt cheek face, it's Frank. Just with a few alterations, he would totally be Frank. And the content of the story and the way he tells it with no words, it's so like a Frank story, but not. And so we'll check it out together. Let's look at this. So we start off with Dominic snoozing away. He's having a weird dream. And then look at this. This is like totally like a Skid Row Unifactor. And we got this like kind of terrifying, yet kind of goofy monster, just like Jim Woodring would draw. Some kind of crazy vision of this eyeball popping out of this monster and looking at this strange tree. Dominic wakes up in a cold sweat. And he's walking down the street and he's thinking about that tree. He finds this weird piece of paper on the ground, some kind of handbill. Very cryptic and odd. It's kind of naughty, though, because we see a naked lady here. And it almost looks like maybe she's being mounted by a fish. Or maybe it's just a mounted fish on the wall. I don't know, but it's something odd going on there. So we have a little cameo from Sister Agnes from the previous story. Dominic sees her and is just like, she's on to me. But then he finds his tree, his beloved tree. He's hugging it. But then this this derelict lumberjack comes by. He's like, move it, kid. I got a job to do. And Dominic protests. He doesn't want the tree to be cut down. So the guy throws him in a garbage can. All this stuff is just so classic cartoon scenario shit to me. So Dominic thinks fast, and he reaches in his pocket, has some money, and he says, hey, I'll give you this money if you stop cutting the tree down. And the guy says, fine, and he goes over to this bar, walks across the street. So Dominic figures out that he'll get a pot, and he'll replant the tree in his pot. But he's got this wheelbarrow, and he's pushing it around, and he's getting really hot and thirsty. So he stops in at this diner, leaves the tree outside. It's like just a weird little aside. He sees the haircut of Wilma Flintstone. So he's picturing like, wow, Wilma Flintstone works here? But when she comes out, she looks like this old battle axe. So he gets his lunch and a soda. And while he's looking at that handbill, the eye like seems to be popping off the page, like he's having a vision. And he spills his soda. He's so shocked. And the waitress slips and falls flat on her back. She's kind of knocked out, kind of dazed. Dominic helps her get to a seat. And the waitress wakes up and comes at Dominic with a rolling pin. So he hightails it out of there, and he goes to find his tree, and there's these two guys talking about it. Now, this is a wordless comic, so it's all scribbles, but obviously they're talking about this tree, or mumbling about it at least. So all of a sudden, when he sees the tree, there's an eyeball growing from it, the same one from his visions. And it seems like this pleases Dominic very much. He tenderly holds it as he walks down the street. He walks by a baseball game, and this one kid hits a homer out of the park. The ball bounces and rolls under this car. At the same time, Dominic trips, and his eyeball rolls under the car. So when one of the kids comes to retrieve the ball, he accidentally grabs the eyeball and takes it back to the game. When Dominic gets there, he sees the baseball, and he runs after the guy, trying to exchange him. But the kids are already playing with the ball, and the pitcher throws it, and the guy hits another homer, just whops the shit out of the eyeball. Dominic goes running, chasing it, and it lands in this field. When he finally finds it, he finds that it's completely fucked up. It's desiccated and just beat up, kind of dead. It's a dead eyeball. I just wanted to say that, like, even though, like, the bottom half of his face is so Frank inspired, but also just the other part, that the kind of half Bazooka Joe, half Henry, it just makes him look like this classic, great comic character that you've known your whole life. So instantly, it's like, oh, I want to read this comic. It's this character I like reading, but it's not, because I've never read a story before this about Dominic, and I never read one after. It's the only story I own by him. So he leaves the eyeball, says a little prayer, and these two crows come down and rip it to shreds. So Dominic is walking down the street, very sad, so dejected. He just sits on the sidewalk and just until nightfall comes, he's just sitting there mourning the eye. And then all of a sudden, that inner city lumberjack comes out of the bar. He's been drinking all night. And he comes up to Dominic, and I guess he took him to bed. And Dominic is just sitting up awake, just saying like, what the fuck? Such a strange ending. Oh man, good stuff. Sherry and Terry. This is also in a Catholic school milieu, but it's like high school. So we see these Catholic school girls, and Sherry is this blonde here, and Terry is her kind of friend. Just one of those girls who, when you're in high school, you just hang out with someone, even though you don't really like them that much, but they're always around. And Terry is kind of a gossip, and this strip is basically just them talking as they walk home from school. And it's a pretty good character piece. Like, you really get a sense of these characters just from the way they talk to each other. Sherry's more open-minded, and doesn't seem as, like, shallow as Terry, because all Terry wants to do is gossip about people and kind of judge people. Like a high school girl, Sorry, I just want to point out, I just noticed, there's like those DC checks from the 60s. I didn't even notice that. But then they start talking about racial stuff. So it looks like it takes place in the 60s because, the car models and everything. And we find out that Terry is also kind of a bigot, like a lot of people were back then. At least they were open about it back then. And we find out that Sherry's not into that stuff. She's kind of defending, civil rights and stuff. How we find out that Sherry has even been going to the public school dances where, other kids hang out from the wrong side of the tracks. And Terry's kind of shocked. She's like, oh my God. And it's kind of implied that Sherry kind of met someone at one of these dances. So they kind of get in an argument about all this stuff, about black people. And apparently these public school dances, there's black kids there. And of course, Terry is shocked by that. And Sherry basically says, okay, I got to go this way. I got to do some shopping. And the last panel, Terry's like, there aren't any stores down that way. Because I think Sherry's just, she's obviously sick of arguing with her stupid friend. I just wanted to say goodbye. Now we have a next issue page here. Some nice cartooning. And that's it for Spud. Unfortunately, there was no second issue. Really makes me sad. This is just I love this kind of stuff. I would buy this every month. I'd actually go to the comic store and pick this up. It's just totally fun, great stuff. I looked up Art Baxter on the internet. Apparently, he's still cranking out comics, and his style looks very different from just looking at the covers. It looks more like he could draw children's books now. He could draw for Blab now, if Blab was still out. I think maybe Blab is back out again. I don't know. But very graphic designy, not nearly as fun as this. I mean, who knows? I haven't read them. Maybe they're great. Maybe they're better than this. But it just didn't look nearly as fun. So hopefully one day I can read them. Because just by how much I like this, I'm sure I'd like other things Art Baxter has done. Hope you guys enjoyed looking at this today. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.